Hey YouTube and eBay sellers, it's Robert here back with another video on shoes today. My last video I put up was actually about selling men's shoes and kind of a complete guide to selling men's dress shoes. So I really didn't have this video in mind to make, but I was back out thrifting this last week and a half, 2 weeks, and made about 4 or 5 trips to some different Goodwills, and just every single time I found a great pickup for men's shoes. So what I kind of wanted to make this video for was the fact that these shoes that I was finding, for the most part, were brands that I had not been really familiar with, I've not seen people talk about in other videos, and are just shoes that I was able to recognize because I've done a lot of the research in terms of what makes a high-end dress shoe. So things like the particular stitching, the materials, the overall craftsmanship, where it's made. These are things that I've learned how to recognize from going out and looking at a lot of different shoes. So when you go out and you thrift, some of what you're probably looking for is things that you've heard other people say do really well. But if you haven't spent the time to really look at those brands and figure out, okay, what makes this brand so great, then you're missing the opportunity to take that knowledge and apply it to the brands that you haven't heard of, but you just recognize them out in the Goodwills. And the good thing about that is a lot of those lesser known brand names that I'm going to share with you today, you can pick up for very inexpensive compared to the more well-known brands, because the people at Goodwill don't know what they're handling either. So a shoe that might sell for $150, $200, that's a brand that, you know, not as many people are out there buying. So when they end up in thrift stores, they're not as common of names. And I've picked some up here I'm going to show you today for under $10 that will sell for over $100. And there's pretty much the consistency in all the shoes that I'm going to show you is that they have plenty of sales that are at least $50. So again, in terms of trying to establish more inventory for yourself on items that you can pick up for maybe under 15, under 10, and sell for over 50, and in many cases today are shoes that are going to sell for over 100. There's great opportunity in becoming familiar with these general characteristics that make higher end items. Even if it's not a brand that you know, you're just going to start to recognize that quality when you see it. If you've watched my other videos, I talk about the same thing, because most of the brands that I'm going out and finding are not brands that are otherwise on my list of, you know, to look for brands. They're just brands that I'm finding because I start to recognize quality when I see it, and that's helped me a tremendous amount in terms of sourcing items. So today I'm going to share with you probably 10 or 11 different shoe brands. I would guess that you probably know at least 4 or 5, and then there's probably going to be about half of them that you maybe not heard of. But comment below if you have heard of any of these brands, what your thoughts on them are, or if you have any other brands that you would consider very similar in this category that you want to share below. It's a big help, and it kind of gets us all talking and sharing, you know, all that information. So all of these brands I went on eBay and have found how many have sold over the last 30-day period, which I believe is how they show it on the sold listings. And I only looked at shoes that were sold as used, and for the most part I eliminate the auction category so I can see what people are getting for best offers or buy it nows. But I think a few of them I did leave the auction in, because generally auction items will sell for lower than if you list it as a buy it now or a best offer price. So some of these, even on auction, you can see they get up in the $50, $60 range. So as I go through, I'll kind of share with you how many I've seen sell and how many of those that sold for over prices of like 50, 75, or 100, just depending on the particular brand and where their average sale price landed. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right into it and take a look at some of these shoes. Okay guys, so the first brand I have for you today here is a shoe brand called Bragano. It's made in Italy. I picked up this pair for $12.79 minus my 20% eBay coupon. And this is a made in Italy loafer. It's got a rubber sole, and one of the things that makes this really special, and why I picked it up, is noticing that it was genuine leather, but then this is what we call woven leather. So I've done really well with woven leather items in the past. One of my highest selling items was a woman's jacket that I picked up because, again, I noticed it was just this beautiful genuine leather and it was all woven. So very intricate, really pretty shoe. I found that one, and I also found another pair in a brown, and again, You can see that whole shoe is all woven leather. Both of these are basically loafers. Now whereas that other brand or the other shoe was rubber sole, this one here is a leather sole. You can see it's in pretty good condition. Again, I'm always checking that heel. You can see there is a little bit of wear to the heel, but overall it's pretty flat across the back. We don't want shoes that have that heavy wear across the entire back side where you could see it's been used a lot. So that's some of the things that you have to look for. My other shoe video, I talk a little bit more about that. But first brand up, Bragano, made in Italy. Alright, so Bragano, over the last 30 days, almost 400 shoes have sold used on eBay. And that's a pretty big number of shoes. That's a pretty big volume. In general, if I see that a brand over the last month only has 1 or 2 sales, there's just not enough demand on eBay for me to necessarily want to sit on that shoe until it finds the perfect person. It would have to be a shoe that I know I can make some really good money on. But a shoe that sold almost 400 just in the used category, and that there's a lot of listings on eBay, that lets me know, okay, people are out there actually looking for this brand. Now of those 391 shoes that I saw, to be exact, 39 of those sold over $75. So 10% of all of those were over $75. There were several pairs that I saw that were over 100, and then there's a lot that sold in that 50 to 75. So again, when you go out and you do your own research on eBay, I like to filter to only look at what's sold, only look at what's sold that was used, and I generally put best offer as an additional filter so that I can see what people were accepting as a best offer. Again, I don't like to look at the auction sales all that much because generally those are going to be a lot less than what I know I can typically get for them if I just wait and put them up as a buy it now best offer sale. All right, next brand, guys, we have one called Testoni. That's Testoni. Again, it's made in Italy, and with our Italian shoes, we're always going to see just beautiful leather craftsmanship. The sides are all stitched in. Just really, really pretty shoes. Another element of the dress shoes that I always stick with, regardless of brand, make sure that they're a rounded toe. You do not want square-toed dress shoes unless it's like a Gucci or a Prada or something where like people just will wear all sorts of weird stuff. But in general, square-toed dress shoes really don't do all that well. So Testoni is a brand that I found here recently. Testoni, there was 114 of these that have been sold recently on eBay, and I showed that there was 40 of them that sold over $75, and some of these shoes sold as high as $200 to $300, or even I think in one case there was a couple that were significantly more than that, and they were probably, from what I remember, they were like exotic, maybe crocodile or lizard, because a lot of these shoes you'll find are made with different animal hides, so that definitely drives the price up. I'll show you guys one of those in a little bit. But again, for a kind of a niche brand, 114 of these sold in the last 30 days is pretty good volume. So that's one of the things that I'm always looking for. Again, is are enough of these selling for it to be something that I know I can put up and people are going to be looking for it and finding it. And next up, we have another Italian shoe, Artioli, Artioli, and it also has the name Star attached to it. Handmade in Italy, right there written in the shoe. You can see I picked this up for $7.79, again minus my 20%, because I always buy at least $20 when I'm at Goodwill so that I get that 20% off. And we've got another loafer. This one's kind of a burgundy brown. It has a small scuff, a couple of those. When I give these a little bit of a polish, it'll pretty these up quite a bit. But again, an Italian shoe. We've got some wear to the sole, but no majorly soft spots on it. Heel is still in pretty good condition. That is really one of the most important things that I look for on the dress shoes, is what kind of condition the heel and the overall sole is in. Because to take these to cobblers, some brands are going to be worth it because you can get a ton of money for, but it's just work that I personally am too lazy to want to do. So I try to make sure for the most part I can give the shoes a light cleaning, polish them up, and you know, call it good. Even if I have to sacrifice a little bit of money, it's just my time. I'm not interested in having to do too much work reconstructing shoes. All right, guys, and on this Artioli brand, we've currently got 30 that have sold over the last month, so about one a day. Again, that's not great, but there's activity on this brand, and the average price was well over $100. A couple of these were actually over $1,000 on this shoe. Again, probably an animal skin, but these shoes can very easily sell for $100 to a few $100s. So on a shoe that I picked up for less than $10, I would easily expect that I will clear over $100 of profit on this shoe, even in the condition that it's in. Maybe I take a best offer for something like $80, but that's a huge score for a shoe that I just happened to pick up right down the street from me. All right, next up we've got one that a lot of you probably will be familiar with. This is Salvatore Ferragamo, and this is the Studio line, made in Italy. This pair was actually, I got lucky. Blue tag was the 50% off this week, so I got this for $12.50. Really pretty Italian loafer. It's got the tassels on the top. If you're not familiar with what some of these different terms are, those are the things to look for. But really good condition, and Salvatore Ferragamo's, they're a shoe that people are looking for a lot. All right, and so how much are people looking for Salvatore Ferragamo? Enough that over 1,700 have recently sold on eBay. 700 of those sold for between $75 and $150, and there was almost 578 pairs that sold for over $150. So Salvatore Ferragamo is a shoe that sells for a ton of money, and to be able to pick something up, even if I had to have paid you know, 20 bucks for this pair of shoes, when I can sell it for over $100, that's an easy decision to make. So Salvatore Ferragamo is going to be one that you will definitely find out there some. I still think that most of the Goodwills, they're not overly familiar with this brand. Again, some people are a little bit more astute than others at the Goodwills, but it's a shoe that I've always done really well with. I've done well with their ties. I've done well with basically anything that Salvatore Ferragamo makes. And next pair, another brand you guys should be familiar with if you've been selling clothing on eBay, Brooks Brothers, made in the United States. And again, we've got another beautiful penny loafer in great shape. And this one here was a pretty good size too. You know, some of your larger size shoes, anything that's an extra width, those are shoes that are a little bit harder to find for people that have those specific size needs, so they generally pay up for them. And Brooks Brothers is a brand that does really well in a variety of categories, but shoes in particular is one of those brands or categories that you can get more money for. And Brooks Brothers is another one, guys, that people are looking for, and there's going to be a lot of activity on eBay. So Brooks Brothers, over the last 30 days, 757 have sold. 239 of those sold for between $75 and $100. And there was 156 pairs of Brooks Brothers, guys, that sold for over $150. So Brooks Brothers, keep an eye out for these shoes. Another brand I had never heard of, Loake, L-O-A-K-E. And this is another dress shoe. It's one of the things that I kind of caught my eye on it. On here you can see it says, hopefully you can see it, it says Goodyear welted. So again, in the process of them making it, I actually, to be honest with you, don't know exactly what that's referring to, but the welting process, I believe, has something to do with how they make the sole. And it's a thing I've seen in a few different pairs of shoes, and they tend to go for pretty good amounts when they have that on there. And Loake is kind of a niche brand, guys, so again, over the last 30 days, I've seen 161 sales on eBay with these. Now, the good news is, of that 161, basically half of those were sold between $75 and $100, and 10 were sold for over $150. So again, it's pretty consistently a higher end shoe, $75 or more shoe. This particular pair, I had to take the tag off to show you guys the brand name, but it was $7 that I paid for these. So again, The people at Goodwill's, they just, when they don't know these brands, they don't mean anything to them, they don't know how to search for quality. That's a win for us as resellers. If we know what we're looking for, we can go out and find these super cheap. Now we have Gordon Rush. Another dress shoe, another made in Italy dress shoe. What I really loved about this pair, and this was one I actually wished had been in my size, but this has got the monk straps on it. Monk strap shoes do really well. I'm sure you've seen some pretty fashionable guys in their suits with these monk strap shoes. I just think monk straps are beautiful, but the good news too is that they sell really well on eBay. So even though this wasn't the size that I needed for me to hold on to these, I knew that I was going to be able to make some good money on them. And when I say good money, I mean that 154 of these sold over the last 30 days. 54 of them sold for over $50. And there was several pairs that sold for over $100. I didn't get a full count on that, but I would probably guess, you know, between 15 and 20 pairs of these out of that 154 sales sold for over $100. So that still represents, you know, about 10% of the overall shoes that sold in this over the last 30 days that sold for over $100. So Gordon Rush, again, quality. Always do your research on all those other elements that I talked about. Don't just assume that the shoe is worth picking up. You got to inspect them. You got to make sure that there's no major issues with them, but it's another good brand to pick up. Hey guys, this one here, brand everybody's heard of, Florsheim. But the thing that makes this special is it's a Florsheim Imperial. So Florsheim I don't generally bother with at all. Florsheim Imperial, however, I have found are very valuable shoes. So you definitely want to keep an eye out for Florsheim Imperials. This one here, again, is another loafer, dress shoe. You could see on this a little bit more wear to the heel, but that's very minor. That is not going to be a deal breaker. If the rest of the shoe's in good condition, clean it up, make a good listing for it. Florsheim Imperials are really a valuable shoe. Okay, and on Florsheims, guys, 1,000 and change pairs of shoes sold over the last 30 days on eBay in Florsheim, and about 300 of those sold for over $75. So 30% roughly of the shoes that sold were over $75. And again, what you're going to find is that another huge percentage of those sold for between $50 and $75. So really good product, because it's a shoe that sells a lot. It's not as niche as some of these other brands, but the price points that it can get are still very significant. All right, guys, hopefully you're immediately noticing something a little bit different about this pair of tasseled loafers. Any guesses as to what this is? It is genuine crocodile. Now, vero cuoio is a word that you're going to find on a lot of Italian dress shoes. I've seen it on shoes made in Brazil. I believe it has something to do with the manufacturing process or what they do to the leather. But vero cuoio is something that I've actually put into my listings. All leather, handmade in Italy. The brand, guys, is a brand called Belvedere. Belvedere Florence. And this pair of shoes, you can see again, I paid under $10 for. Now, Belvederes are going to be one of the shoes that I found the least overall number of sales on, but some of the highest price points on those shoes. Over the last 30 days period on eBay, as far as how many have sold under used, there's just over 200 of these that have sold. Now, the good news, over 96 of those sold for over $75. And if you go in and you look at the sold listings for Belvedere, you're going to see that there's a lot of these that are exotic animals. And when I say that there's 96 that sold for over $75, you're going to see a huge number of those listings sold for significantly more than $75. We're talking $150, $200. Anytime we found some of these in like the boots, you're talking $200, $300 on these shoes. So this pair is one that I was really excited about, and I picked it up because I immediately recognized that this was a alligator or a crocodile skin I was looking at. It looked to be in great shape. I wasn't even as concerned with what the brand was, but when I went and searched eBay, it just confirmed what I was already sure of, which was that I had a good find here. Okay, guys, this one here should need no introduction at all. It's the Chanel. This is a woman's shoe, and one of the reasons I was really excited about this was this shoe was in the men's section. It was up on a top rack, and I just happened to look at it, and I was like, the leather, the quality of it looked really good. I'm like, this obviously isn't a men's shoe, but the features of it still kind of grabbed my attention. And so I reached up to that rack, grabbed it, and then I see it's a pair of Chanel's, and I was super excited for obvious reasons. Okay, so guys, what made this so valuable? Why am I so excited about this? Well, on eBay in the last 30 days, used shoes that have sold 1,400 pairs, 500 of those, a third, sold for over $350, and another 800 of those sold for $100 to $350. So almost the entirety of the shoes that sold in Chanel's over that last sold period were over $100, and a third of those sold for over $350. So this is one of the most valuable brands that I found personally in shoes ever. Okay guys, next pair, Neal M. And this is one I'm not, as excited about as some of the other shoes that I've shown you guys. But it is another good brand that pretty consistently has over $50 pairs sold. So I would be really, concerned about making sure that it's in good shape. There's plenty of tread left on the soles, because you can see here there's actual tread to it. So, just like a pair of tires, we want to make sure that we're not seeing that tread loss, and that we can actually feel some depth in there. That's a good indication of how much wear it's got. But this pair was in really good shape, and consistently I found sells for 40, 50, but a lot of sales over the $50 mark. Over the last 30 days on this pair, guys, there's 56 Neal M's that had sold, and of that, pretty much all of them were selling for over 50, or the vast majority. So I did not see a lot of these that were over $100, but this is a shoe that we can say falls in that $50 to $75, $50 to $80 range pretty consistently. So definitely worth picking up when you find it. And just, again, one more brand for you to go out and hopefully have more successful trips to the thrift store, finding shoes like this that maybe didn't have you didn't have on your list of brands, but you start to broaden your horizons and understandings a little bit, and find pairs like this. Okay, and last brand, guys, that I'm going to talk about here, just real briefly, Doc Martens. This is one that I'm sure most people are very familiar with, and I am kind of including this only because I just found 3 pairs that fall under the very specific requirements that I have when it comes to Doc Martens. Obviously, that they're in good condition is one, but the biggest thing with the Doc Martens shoes that make these more valuable is when you find a pair that were made in England. And actually, if I show you the bottom of it, we'll see right there, made in England. Will I buy a pair that was not made in England, that was made in China? Yes, if I can buy it for really inexpensive and it's in great shape, because then I know I'm going to probably make maybe $30 to $50 on that. But when I find a pair that's made in England, guys, now I get a shoe that I can easily sell for over $50. Doc Martens, again, looking at the past sales period of that for shoes that have sold that were used, there's about 850 of these that have sold specifically made in England, and over 200 of those sold for above $75. So about, again, 25% of the overall shoes that were sold in this made in England Doc Martens sold for over 75. So you have a really good chance, if you find a good pair of Doc Martens and they're made in England, of getting that $75 to $100. And yes, there are several pairs, if you go and search eBay, that sold for over $100 that were used shoes. That's the key here, guys. All these shoes that I'm talking about, I'm not talking about you went out and you found a perfect pair that you could list as new. No, if I don't have it with tags on it, I want to list it as used. Limit the potential that somebody complains and says this pair that you have showing as new is definitely been used. I don't generally mess around with it if there's any concern that somebody's going to look at me and say, no, you misrepresented what this shoe is. So I would rather list it as used, make a little bit less, and know that I'm probably not going to get somebody pissed off at me. And so all of these shoes that I've covered with you guys when I'm talking about how many have sold and what they sold for We're talking about specific listings that were used shoes. And all of these shoes that I've shown you, I've found at Goodwill's. There's no other thrift store of any of today's shoes that I found that were not on Goodwill racks. And there's not a single shoe in here that I paid more than $20 for. As I showed you, the vast majority of these I didn't even pay $10 for. So when we're talking shoes that sell over $50, a lot of these over $100, very, very, very profitable niche for you to start building on your eBay sales. You can see above here, and I went into much further detail on my last shoe video about how I list them, how I package them, how I ship them. But shoes is a huge part of my eBay business because it's one of my more profitable niches. If you enjoyed today's video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you want to see more, and comment down below with whatever your thoughts or questions were in terms of these brands. If you know other brands that you think are same kind of thing where they're not real well known but you've had a ton of success with them, I would love to hear what some of those are so that I can add it to my repertoire. And please let me also know if there's anything that you'd love to see me talk about in a future video on eBay. I've got, you know, some of my core groups, but I have other things I could talk about other than just like what type of items that I like to sell. I just finished my first year of like my first full year of selling on eBay, so going into like how to do the accounting and filing taxes. I just filed my taxes a couple days ago and had to include this for the first time. So any of those things that you guys might have questions on, I'd love to try and make some future content on it for you guys. And until then, I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.